Welcome to Liza Listens. Today, my guest is Tou Ger Digit Lee, former World of Dance Chicago champion turned transformation coach. Trained through the well-renowned accomplishment coaching, he helps unfulfilled overachievers stop doubting themselves and start owning their greatness. Tou Ger's purpose is to create a world where people love living life, where they're not only successful, but also fulfilled. In this interview, we discuss his experiences as an Asian American, specifically being Hmong American and an Asian American male dancer. We'll also talk about his definition of success and why he transitioned from being a professional dancer to becoming a transformation coach. Welcome, Tou Ger. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your background and what your inspiration was to become a transformation coach?
Yeah, so my background, before I became a coach, I was actually a professional dancer, which is
Nice.
way out there, completely different. It's a long story, but I'll try to cut it. I'll try to give you the short version of it. Um, so I'm from Wisconsin originally, where I was born and raised. In 2012, I moved to Chicago to pursue dance professionally, and then in 2016, I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue it even farther. In 2017, right when I was kind of getting like that rise, and people were starting to recognize me, and I was really starting to pick things up. My dad got sick, and we were told he only had 6 months left to live.
Oh, no.
So naturally I picked family over career, even though, it was something I've been chasing for a long time. I picked family over that dream, that career. And I moved back to Chicago so that I could be closer in the Midwest to my family. For those of you that don't know, it's like a 2.5 hour drive between Chicago and where I was born. So
Hmm.
it wasn't too bad anyways, right? But I moved back, and in doing that, I felt like I lost a big piece of myself. It's kind of like when somebody only identifies themselves with their work and then they get fired.
Hmm.
But imagine that being so much worse, because this wasn't just my work, this was like my dream.
Wow.
And I had to choose to give it up to be with, my dying father. And I fell into a big state of depression around, I don't know who I am, what's my value. If I'm not dancing, then, what's my purpose?
Mhm.
And after about 5 or 6 months of that, I finally just kind of had enough. And I think my brain was like starting to try to look for ways for me to get out of that. And I remembered a conversation I had with a fellow coach of mine in 2012, way back when. And she was just kind of coaching me for free because she loved the mission that I was on as a dancer. And she was like, hey, if you ever decide to hang up the cape with dance, I think you would be a really good coach.
Mm.
And of course, I didn't, take her up on that right away, but it always kind of stayed in the back of my mind. And it finally came up again. And I was like, I think it's time to explore that and to see what that world looks like. So, I eventually got into the coaching world, did all of that. And the original intention was just to help myself transform, right? To do the work for myself, and then also have the tools to actually put it into my dance, so
Right.
that when I teach dance, I could teach like life values through movement. Um, the thing though is, after a few months in the program, I realized that I had a really toxic relationship with dance, and I was kind of using it as an addiction.
Wow.
And that's something on its own, but our passions can become addictions that aren't healthy. And so that's when I decided that I would no longer pursue dance professionally, and I would just do it as a love and as a lifestyle, but that my career choice from now on would be coaching. And that the purpose I exist to fulfill on would be fulfilled through the outlet of coaching. Yeah, so that's what made me become a coach, and transformational, in particular, because it's the work that I wish I could have had. There was so much about me that I didn't like and I didn't love about myself. And truth be told, like I didn't even realize this, but I really didn't like who I was.
Wow.
And I think that through reinventing that relationship with myself and transforming who I was, or who I am, it helped me get to where I am now, to be confident and to be able to stand up tall and speak my mind and do certain things, right? And while I was dancing professionally, because I didn't like who I was so insecure and timid, and there were a lot of times where I could have had success, but I like shot myself in the foot because of imposter syndrome or doubt. And I know that there's so many people out there who do that, and so I want to play a part in supporting them to get out of their own way, essentially.
As a high achiever yourself, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
Yeah, yeah. So the championship, for anyone listening in who doesn't or was isn't aware about the story, in 2010, I had a goal to win World of Dance Chicago, the freestyle competition, right? And in 2017, I finally accomplished that.
Nice.
And when I accomplished that, it was like I can't even begin to tell you. Like if you watch, it's actually on YouTube. But if you watch the video, the first thing I do is I go up and I grab my opponent's hand and I, like I'm like, oh, like and a lot
Wow.
of people think that it's because I was being humble and I was trying to be like, oh, like let's give love to my competitor. Really, what was going on in my mind was like, dude, like like
Wow.
like it's almost like I got lucky, and
Wow.
I wanted to recognize him because I felt like it was just luck.
Wow.
Um, and I remember some of the first thoughts were like, one of the first thoughts was like, now I got to go on Instagram and delete all of my bad practice videos, so that so that everyone who goes and looks at it now isn't like, oh, actually he's not that great. That was like one of the first thoughts I had. And yeah, so there were so many times where I had success and either I shot myself in the foot so I didn't get the amount of success I wanted, or I would have it and I'd be like, what now? This still it still doesn't feel good.
How do you define success?
I love that question. Um, because I'm a very people don't like my answer.
Oh.
I think success is very easy. When everyone says everyone's got their own definition of success, I'm like, no, that's stupid. Because by definition, success just means you accomplish something you set out for. So if I tell you, you know what, I don't know, my goal is to raise my hand, successful, right? And and that's really all success is. Now, what I think people are actually talking about when they say everyone's got their own definition of success is they're talking about fulfillment, right? They're talking about the moment when they can finally just be at ease. The moment when it's good enough, it's finally enough, whether that be
Right.
$1 million or that be a family that you can settle down with. I don't know, right? That's where everyone's got their own definition of it. Um, but I think people are mixing up success with fulfillment, and they're like chasing fulfillment, but through the outlet of success. And that's why you have so many people who are successful but not happy and don't
Right.
feel like they have enough yet. So ultimately, to wrap that around, for me, the definition of success is having a goal, accomplishing the goal. Easy as that.
Let's talk about your Asian American experience. Being Hmong American and an Asian male dancer, what challenges did you face and how did you overcome them?
Where to begin with this because it's so, it kind of shows up everywhere. Uh, I mean, even deciding to pursue dance for me was huge. And I'll say this: for I'm Hmong American, um, and even growing up as a Hmong American, I felt like Asians have this thing where we kind of feel like second class citizens in some way, right?
Mhm.
Like the white person comes first, and Asians can't do certain things, right? There's the bamboo ceiling.
Yeah.
um Hmong people have like another layer of that, where a lot of the times where, for example, when I wanted to dance, my mom would be like, oh, that's only for the Chinese and the Japanese and the Korean people. You can't do that because you're Hmong. So I felt like I was two layers deep in
Wow.
that. And when I decided to drop out of school to pursue dance professionally, like there were Asian people that we were seeing on TV doing it. It's just there weren't any Hmong people,
Mm.
and therefore it was kind of like, oh, you're monks, so you can't do it. They could do it though because they're Chinese and Japanese, but you can't do it because
Wow.
you're Hmong. So
Never
that
knew
was
that.
definitely, yeah, that was a huge challenge, growing up as well. And then on top of that, being first generation Hmong American, growing up, there was a lot of gang violence because of a lack of
Mm.
identity, I think. And so growing up around gang violence when people were joining gangs by the third grade, smoking and drinking by the fourth and fifth grade, and then having sex by the sixth grade. I think it takes a toll on you. And I was fortunate enough to have dance to not go down that route, right? Just to give you some context about how young we were, this was during the time we were learning about anti-drugs.
Mhm.
And that's how young we were. And I remember the only reason why I didn't do any of that was because my ESL teacher, I was talking to her. Her and I had a really close relationship, and we're still connected today. But I was talking to her about my decision to maybe think about joining a gang because I was invited.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, you love dancing, right? And I was like, yeah. She's like, make dancing your anti everything bad. Not just your anti-drug, your anti-everything bad. And I lived by that and it saved me from a lot of things. The downfall with that, however, is that it secluded me and made me not fit in with some of the other Hmong kids that were
Mm.
doing the gang violence and whatnot. So I felt like I wasn't doing what the cool kids were doing, which is the gang violence. And I wasn't necessarily smart enough to be like one of the nerdy Asians, and hang out with them. So I felt like I was kind of in my own little space. So that also impacted me a lot. And then, not to mention being a professional dancer in Los Angeles, the typecasting is
Right.
huge. There's been, times where I go in and, for example, there's a choreographer that I really admire, and he's a good friend of mine. And him and I dance in the same team and whatnot. And his name is Wildebeest, actually, really well-known dancer. And I do an audition, and I think I do really well. And he's like, "Dude, you killed that, man! You killed that." But the Brian Friedman, who is also a really well-known dancer, is the guy who's picking the cast, right? And he cuts me. And later, I talked to my friend Will, and he goes, "You know what? Like, you did really good. It's nothing on your skills. You would have never been picked because you're Asian."
Oh,
And
no.
it was just, and he didn't say that out of like, you're Asian, so you're not good enough. He said, because it's like you're typecasted, you
Oh
know.
my gosh.
A lot of the work out there also, were a lot of the work that I received was around the fact that I was Asian, and a lot of the times, like I did an audition, and they needed the days would rotate, and because I was one of the only Asian people there, they couldn't have me because if somebody came to the show twice in a row, like 2 days in a row, they would notice that my character was different. So then I got
Hmm.
cut because I was the only Asian, and if somebody white came and took my place, it was like a stunt double thing. It
Oh
didn't
my.
work. Yeah,
Oh
so
no.
that played a huge role in it too. And then outside of that, of course, we got to talk about like the racism, right? The microaggressions, the being looked down upon because I think Asians are kind of the model minority of we put our heads down and we just nod politely. That definitely played a huge impact as well. So when I became a coach, the Asian identity thing was actually something that I had to deeply unpack.
What's next in store for Tou Ger? Are you working on any new projects?
Yeah. So lots of projects coming up, some that aren't exactly fleshed out yet. A lot of my projects, I guess you could say, I like to consider them practices. And in the way of, so for example, to give you an example here for New Year's, um, instead of coming up with a New Year's resolution of a goal that I wanted to accomplish by the end of the year, I
Mhm.
made up the practice to offer a free coaching session every single day, every
Every
single
single
weekday.
day.
Yeah,
Wow.
every single weekday for the whole year. And you can see that there's no actual like result in terms of whatever at the end of the line, right? But the practice is the goal. To show up to practice every single day. That's the goal. So that's one of the things that I'm up to, having that practice of coaching every single day for free, or every single weekday. So if any of the listeners are, needing some support or anything like that at all, feel free to reach out for free, no strings attached. Um, on top of that, I am building a group coaching program. So my group coaching program is particularly going to be for the young adults, young professionals who right now don't have a lot of money but need a lot of support. I think the fault with a lot of coaches nowadays, or the coaching industry, is that it's really expensive, and and therefore the only people who can afford it are the people at the so-called top, right, who are making a certain amount of dollars. But when you look at who the service could actually benefit the most, it's the up and coming young professionals, you
Right.
know. And it's kind of like you tell me a kid who's a senior in college, who's dealing with a lot of doubt and not sure where they want to go with their life, um, who can afford $1,000 or $2,000 a month for coaching. Like, not a lot of college kids can.
Right.
So I'm coming up with a program, and it's one of those things where I want to offer it at an affordable price to the people who need it the most, and invest in these people who no other coaches are willing to invest in yet. So that's one of the other things that I'm coming up with right now too.
Thanks again, Tou Ger, for being here. Could you please tell us how we can get in touch with you and get more information about your coaching business?
Yeah, so my website is tougerlee.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Tou Ger Digit Lee. Yeah, and I'm gonna be the only one with that name. Come at me on Facebook. I love connecting. I love just having genuine, real conversations. And then also, if you are someone who considers yourself a purpose-driven leader, someone who is doing work to make a bigger difference in the world, or a difference in your community or someone else's life, I have a group on Facebook called Purpose Driven Leaders Network, where we really exist to just support each other to become the best versions of ourselves, so that we can give the best of ourselves. So if you're interested in that as well, so 3 different things there. Yeah, thank you.
And that's our show for today. Please follow our guests and continue to learn about the incredible things they're doing. Their links are posted on the show notes. And if you like this content, please subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications, like, and share this channel. I'd really appreciate it. I'm Liza Noche. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.